The underwater world of Bikini Bottom. It's easy to get caught up with all the jokes and weirdness, but if you stop and think about it for a second, there's something kind of interesting going on under the surface. Like, how does this whole town actually work? See, when I was doing the video on how Patrick makes money, it made me wonder, how do other characters afford their lives, pay their bills, and keep things running in this underwater society? I mean, sure, it's a cartoon, so you wouldn't think that they'd be worrying about stuff like that, but when you really look at it, Bikini Bottom is set up like a mini capitalistic economy. You got Mr. Krabs running the Krusty Krab like a tight ship, Spongebob and Squidward working for a paycheck, and even characters like Plankton and Sandy doing their own thing just to make ends meet. But how does this all fit together? Like, what's really going on with the money in Bikini Bottom? Okay, so Bikini Bottom might seem like just a goofy underwater town, but again, if you just look closer, it's actually a pretty solid representation of a capitalistic economy.
That's dangerous, like taking candy from a baby!
Let's kick things off with the Krusty Krab. This place isn't just a fast food joint, it's basically the beating heart of Bikini Bottom's economy. Mr. Krabs runs it like a classic capitalist. He gives me the vibes of like a John D. Rockefeller or a Henry Ford. He's all about maximizing profit, cutting costs, and keeping a tight grip on his business. We've seen him pull some pretty wild stuff to save a buck, from reusing old napkins to charging extra for pretty much anything he can think of. But here's the thing, the Krusty Krab is also a prime example of how jobs work in Bikini Bottom. SpongeBob and Squidward are the main employees, and their lives basically revolve around their job. SpongeBob's love for the job shows us the ideal worker in a capitalistic society. He's dedicated, enthusiastic, and always willing to go the extra mile, even if he's not getting paid for it. On the flip side, you've got Squidward, always wanting to quit his job because he hates it, yet he needs it to maintain his lifestyle. It's a classic case of working to live, and it highlights how even in a place as bizarre as Bikini Bottom, the need to earn a living is a central part of life. But it's not just about the Krusty Krab. I mean, other characters have their own roles in this economy too. Plankton runs the chum bucket, even though it's a pretty sad excuse for a business. Sandy's got her science lab, and even just outside of the movie, it's hinted that she might be funded by some sort of research grant. Even Mrs. Puff runs a boating school, which, let's be honest, probably has some kind of tuition fee and have probably made millions off just SpongeBob alone.
Too late! SpongeBob!
Even though it is just a cartoon, you can totally see some real economic differences going on. Not everyone's living the same way down there, and it's kind of wild to see how that plays out. It's like, yeah, they're all underwater, but their lives are definitely not the same. Let's go back to Mr. Krabs for a second. The guy's got a thriving business and he's always scheming to make more money. He's kind of like the character who's always thinking about his bottom line, and it shows in the way he lives. Krabs has his own house and he's always bragging about his cash reserves. It's safe to say he's living comfortably. Krabs is probably the clearest example of someone who's got his wealth and property game locked down. He's a businessman through and through, and you just know he owns his own house, his boat, and of course the Krusty Krab. I mean, Mr. Krabs is all about ownership because it means control, and more importantly for him, no one can take his money away.
Money, oh money, how I love thee. Cha-ching, cha-chong, cha-chang.
Not that different from how the upper class works in real life. Now compare that to Squidward. I mean, Squidward's got a decent place next to SpongeBob, but he's always grumpy about his life. The dude's also got expensive taste. He loves his art, and he's always dreaming of a more luxury lifestyle. But the reality is, he's stuck working a job he hates at the Krusty Krab. He's basically the poster child for living paycheck to paycheck, always stressed because he can't afford the nice stuff that he really wants.
Look at yourself. You're losing your bluish glow. Stop worrying so much.
Now, my first job fresh out of high school was in construction. One day, one of my coworkers fell 2 stories while working on the side of a building. Luckily, he survived, but not without some serious injuries. Since we were both fresh out of high school with no job experience and even less knowing and understanding our rights as workers, my friend never saw any sort of compensation since the owner of the company assured him he was gonna take care of him. Now, he did in fact pay for his medical bills, but in hindsight, my friend should have been compensated way beyond that. This is why I'm happy to have the opportunity to work with the very first sponsor of the channel, the law firm of Morgan & Morgan. Being the largest injury law firm in the United States, they have the manpower, legal expertise, and years of experience dealing with any case. Literally over 3 million people, like you call them, every year in their time of need. Morgan & Morgan's records of success is long, but these are just some of the recent verdicts where they have won millions for customers. Like Yvette Torres, she was hit by a truck in November 2021, and Morgan & Morgan attorneys rejected a 2.3 pretrial offer, but winning 11.9 at trial. They will fight to get you the best possible offer if you become their client. You can submit a claim in less than 2 minutes by answering just a few questions on their website, and one of the representatives would reach out by phone. Thanks again, Morgan & Morgan, for sponsoring today's video. You can check the link in the description. Then there's Sandy, who's kind of in a league of her own. She's got her own science projects, and she's also not tied down by the need for a typical job like the others. If anything, Sandy's more like a self-made success story. She's got her own resources and pretty much living her best life without worrying too much about money. She's basically the successful freelancer in the show. Then Patrick, on the other hand, is living under a literal rock. There's a lot of debate about whether he's actually squatting or if that rock is somewhat his legal property, but honestly, it seems more like he just found the spot and claimed it. Patrick's got the whole don't worry about it attitude, so the idea of him dealing with property ownership or even paying rent seems kind of ridiculous. What's really interesting though is how these differences in lifestyle and wealth can create kind of a social hierarchy in Bikini Bottom. Krabs might be rich, but he's also seen a bit of a tyrant.
Spongebob, what are you doing?
Squidward wants to be seen as sophisticated and above it all, but he's stuck in a rut. And Sandy, while respect for her brains and independence, she's kind of just doing her own thing, not really fitting into the same economy categories as the others. Yeah, it's a small town, but you can definitely see the different levels of wealth and lifestyle playing out, just like in the real world. And to me, that's what kind of makes the Bikini Bottom's economy so fascinating. It's a mix of characters living very different lives, all within the same wacky underwater society. The last question that I'm sure a lot of you guys are having, including myself, is who actually owns their homes down there? It's not always super clear, but we can make some pretty good guesses based on what we see in the show. For example, I always thought that all of the buildings in Bikini Bottoms were items that have fallen from ships. We might see coral reefs here and there, but most of the characters in the show live in places that are not native to the ocean. But then I found this picture from the Patrick show. All of these houses were built. This means that these characters had to pay for them. Now, this kind of does lead me to believe that Bikini Bottom doesn't have property taxes, especially for housing. Although we have seen some instances like city services, garbage collectors, I think it's not actually funded by the government of Bikini Bottom, but paid by the residents who wish to have them.
Just one more house and I can finally say goodbye to this trash life. Let's get these in the truck and get out of here.
But the wealth gap in Bikini Bottom made me wonder if they might have some kind of universal basic income. Universal basic income, or UBI for short, is an idea where the government gives everyone a set amount of money every month, no strings attached. It doesn't matter if you're rich, poor, working, or not. Everyone gets the same amount. The idea is to cover basic needs, so people aren't stressed about things like food, rent, or bills. It sounds crazy, but think about it. How else do you explain the fact that someone like Patrick, who doesn't have a steady job, can still get by? Sure, he lives under a rock and all, but he's not starving. And he's got some basic amenities, even though it's all made out of sand.
Daddy found you some vittles. Bottom feeders.
But the idea here is that everyone in Bikini Bottom gets enough money to cover their basic needs whether they work or not. It would explain why some characters can live pretty comfortably without doing so much, while others like Squidward work not because they have to, but because they want more than just the basic things. Again, this fits with real life ideas about UBI. You'll have people who want to better themselves and have a better life than the minimum, and others who will be lazy just to get by with whatever they're given for free. So yeah, Bikini Bottom might just be a 2D city, but it's got layers. It's like a tiny underwater mirror of the real world with all the quirks of a capitalistic society. But beyond the jokes and the weirdness, it's kind of a reminder that no matter where you are, underwater or land, people are always trying to figure out how to get by.
Made with sand!
That was cute when you were rich.